Gentlemen, let us commence with a matter most urgent and weighty. On the 6th day of January in the year of our Lord 2021, a mob, incensed and unbridled, did storm the Bastille of our Republic, the capital, with aims to overturn the legitimate outcome of a presidential election. This act, stark and bold, has laid bare questions fundamental to our Republic's steadfastness and its governance. How shall we, with wisdom drawn from our own epochs, dissect these events?
Such audacity, in my time, would be met with a firm hand, yet always within the bounds of law. The insurrection at the Capitol is a stark reminder of the fragility of our republic. It behooves us to remember that liberty, when unmoored from law and justice, becomes the very tyranny it seeks to escape.
While the spirit of resistance is to be cherished in any democracy, it ought not to degenerate into anarchy. The enlightenment of the citizenry and their adherence to the rule of law must prevail, or else we shall find our republic a mere shadow, haunted by the specters of its unfulfilled promises.
I find myself in the curious position of agreeing with Mr. Jefferson. The role of leader is not merely to reflect the passions of the mob, but to temper and, if necessary, oppose them with reason and justice. The scenes at the Capitol were a blasphemy against the very principles upon which our government is constructed.
Indeed, the insurrection exposes a critical flaw in our system, the susceptibility of the public to faction and to leaders who would exploit faction for their own gain. Our government, devised with such care to prevent tyranny, must also guard against the tyranny of the majority or the violent upheaval by a minority. The sight of the Capitol under siege rattles the very frame of our Constitution. It underscores the necessity of a vigorous executive and a judiciary free from the fetters of populism. Disorder must not be the crucible through which we resolve our political contentions.
Your insights cut to the core of our subject. The question then becomes, how do we ensure that our democracy, already tested by time and tumult, can withstand such assaults, and what measures must we fortify to prevent a recurrence? Let us proceed, keeping these inquiries in mind. Let us begin with the role and power of protest in shaping a democracy. Mr. Washington, your thoughts?
Protests, when founded on genuine grievances, can be the voice of liberty crying out against tyranny. Yet there is a chasm between peaceful assembly and violent insurrection. My experience with the Whiskey Rebellion taught me that while the government must listen, it also must maintain order.
Yet, one must remember, Mr. Washington, that the roots of our very independence were watered by the tumults of protest. Dissent is the hallmark of a free society. The question then becomes, how does a society distinguish just protest from lawless insurrection?
Aye, Mr. Jefferson, there's the rub. History, our guide, shows that unchecked mob rule can lead to anarchy. Protests, yes, but within the confines of law and decency. Without such boundaries, we descend into chaos.
I find it curious, Mr. Adams, how you champion law and order, yet overlook the fundamental role a strong, centralized government plays in quelling disturbances. The fabric of a nation is kept intact not merely by the virtue of its citizens, but by the strength and resolve of its government. Both points, though seemingly at odds, highlight our Constitution's brilliance. It provides avenues for grievances through amendments and legislative alterations. The Constitution is not a static document, but a living covenant that adapts, allowing peaceful change.
And yet, Mr. Madison, the challenge remains, ensuring that those mechanisms are accessible and effectively address the citizens' concerns. Failure to do so fertilizes the ground for dissent.
Indeed, Mr. Jefferson, accessibility is key. However, as the helmsman of our infant republic, I observe that national unity is paramount. Divisive factions fueled by unfounded grievances weaken the sinews of our union.
Unity? Yes, General Washington, but let us not be naive. A free society will always harbor dissenting voices. The task of governance is not to silence them, but to ensure that such expressions do not undermine the public safety and welfare.
Mr. Hamilton, while I concur with your assertion regarding public safety, we must also ponder the ethical dimensions. The indiscriminate wielding of power in quashing dissent could very well morph into tyranny, the very beast we fought to escape.
Mr. Adams speaks to a fundamental truth. The vitality of a republic lies in its ability to balance the scales between order and liberty, allowing for robust yet peaceful expressions of the popular will.
A delicate balance indeed, Mr. Jefferson. The framers of the Constitution, mindful of tyranny's seductive whisper, crafted a system designed to absorb the shocks of societal discontent through lawful means.
A robust discussion, gentlemen. It appears that while we may diverge on methods, our ultimate aim remains the preservation and nurturing of the tree of liberty, with an understanding that its health is dependent upon the judicious expression of the people's voice, constrained by the bonds of law and mutual respect. Gentlemen, we now turn our attention to the influence of misinformation on public opinion and action. Thomas, your thoughts?
Misinformation, a pestilence upon the intellect of the Commonwealth, threatens the very foundation of our republic. An educated populace is our best defense against this contagion. My efforts to establish the University of Virginia were but a single step towards inoculating our citizenry against the perils of ignorance.
Pray, Thomas, do not act as though your university is a panacea. Falsehoods have ever been the tools of the demagogue, igniting passions and leading the masses astray. A learned man can discern truth from fiction, but the mob is easily swayed by the most convincing liar.
Indeed, John, you highlight a significant predicament. Yet I assert the vital role of a free press as a bulwark of democracy. However, its power is not without perils. When the press itself succumbs to the propagation of falsehoods, it undermines its essential function and endangers the public weal. The problem extends beyond the press. Our republic's architecture was designed to mitigate the effects of factions, those spurred by misinformation included. Yet it seems our safeguards are not infallible. The mechanisms of representation and the diffusion of power, while effective, cannot alone quell the influence of deceit.
Unity is paramount, gentlemen. My farewell address cautioned against the baneful effects of the spirit of party. Partisan falsehoods divide the nation, impairing our ability to discern truth and act for the common good. How quickly we have forgotten the lessons of our own history.
Alexander, your faith in the press, while noble, may be misplaced. It is not merely the responsibility of the press to uphold truth, but of every citizen. An informed electorate must be the ultimate guardian of democracy.
Ah, Thomas, but how does one ensure this electorate remains informed? In an age where information is as easily fabricated as it is disseminated, the discerning eye grows weary.
Let us not underestimate the cunning of those who manufacture falsehoods. They prey on fear and uncertainty. The solution lies not solely in education or the press, but in the integrity of our leaders and their willingness to confront deception head-on.
A well-constructed union must indeed foster an environment where truth can flourish. Yet, are we to simply hope for leaders of integrity? What of the system itself? It must be designed to withstand the machinations of the deceitful, ensuring that no single faction can subsume the truth under waves of falsehood.
Your insights have shed light on this complex issue. Misinformation threatens the republic from within, preying on ignorance and division. Education, a free press, and the integrity of our leaders and institutions all play critical roles in combating this menace. Let us proceed, mindful of the fraught path that lies ahead. Gentlemen, our discourse now turns to the heavy burden of leadership in quelling and denouncing violence. Mr. Adams, your thoughts?
It is self-evident that leadership molds the character of a nation. A leader, by his very countenance, can either endorse the law's authority or embolden the lawless. It is imperative that we, as stewards of the Republic, condemn violence in unequivocal terms.
Yet Adams preaches what he knows not. True leadership demands not only the condemnation of violence, but also the fortitude to act against discord. It is the preservation of order and the Constitution against the machinations of the mob that signifies true leadership.
Hamilton, with respect, you brandish the sword too freely. There lies a balance, fine as the hairspring in a watch, between the stifling of dissent and the fostering of revolutionary principles. Our endeavor should be not to quash speech, but to guide the Republic through its tempests with a steady hand.
Jefferson speaks to the balance, yet our present course demands a firmer hand. As commander during the great contest for independence, I witnessed firsthand that restraint coupled with conviction guides the ship of state best. Lawlessness must find no refuge, else we sow the seeds of our own undoing.
If I might interject, the fabric of our government was designed with such eventualities in mind. The separation of powers, the checks and balances, they are not mere suggestions, but bulwarks against tyranny, including that which is born of violence. Madison underscores a crucial point. Yet theoretical bulwarks crumble without the active custodianship of our leaders. We must be the adamantine pillars against the tempest, else all our grand design is naught but folly and wind.
Pray, Hamilton, your zeal oft blinds you to the heart of the matter. Moral leadership does not equate solely to the wielding of power, but to the demonstration of virtue, restraint, and the upholding of the sacrosanct law above all personal ambition.
Adams, for once your words do not overreach their mark. It is through the exemplar of our deeds and the tenor of our discourse that we shepherd the Republic. A leader must be the bulwark against the storms of faction and folly.
Indeed, leadership is not merely a matter of declaring principles. It is embodying them, especially in times of direst need. Our actions, our restraint, and our dedication to the rule of law illuminate the path for the Republic.
A robust discussion. It seems we are agreed that leadership, in its truest form, is both a shield against and a beacon beyond violence. It requires a melding of strength and restraint, of action and principle. Let us carry this understanding forward as we navigate the tumultuous seas that lie ahead. Let us now consider the resilience and vulnerabilities of our democratic institutions, particularly in light of recent tumults. Mr. Madison, your thoughts to commence?
The architecture of our Constitution, gentlemen, was ingeniously wrought to safeguard liberty and restrain the excesses of power. Yet, the fabric of democracy itself appears threadbare when public unrest tests its resilience. The checks and balances are only as strong as the society's collective respect for them. With all due respect, Mr. Madison, your checks and balances presuppose a population committed to the rule of law. What we've witnessed is a stark reminder that institutions without the sword or the purse, to use your phraseology, are mere parchment barriers against the flood of insurrection.
Mr. Hamilton, your penchant for a Leviathan state is well noted. However, the strength of our institutions does not lie solely in their design, but in the virtue of the citizenry. A populace enlightened by education, bound by the cords of civic responsibility, is the bulwark of democracy. Our institutions must evolve, lest they become the chains that bind us, rather than the safeguards of our liberty.
Evolution, Mr. Jefferson? Our democratic system is underpinned by a moral foundation, yet what we behold is a corrosion of civic virtue. Institutions are only as robust as the individuals who operate within them. When leaders forsake the rule of law for partisan gain, they undermine the very edifice of our governance.
The survival of our Republic hinges on respect for the institutions that govern it. During the infancy of our independence, I too witnessed the fragility of democracy. Yet, 'tis our collective adherence to justice and law that has preserved it. Where factionalism and personal ambition supersede national interest, there lies the greatest threat to our Union.
Factionalism, indeed, General Washington. Yet let us not forget, the arm of government must be strong enough to protect itself and the society it serves. An insurrection, a rebellion against duly elected governance, is a cancer that must be excised lest the entire body politic suffers. An emboldened government risks encroaching upon the liberties it vows to protect. The dilemma lies in balancing necessary strength with virtuous restraint. Without the latter, we risk tyranny. Without the former, anarchy.
And yet, history teaches us that institutions must not become sanctuaries for the preservation of privilege. They ought to be living entities, reflective of the will and the welfare of the people. When they cease to serve these ends, 'tis not the institutions that must be preserved, but the principles they embody.
A spirited discussion, gentlemen. It appears that while our views on the nature and role of institutions vary, we concur on the necessity of their preservation and adaptation. Let us then proceed, bearing in mind the gravitas of our discourse for the present age. Gentlemen, Our discourse now veers to the legal and ethical quandaries that arise when our electoral processes are contested. Mr. Hamilton, your thoughts lead our charge, if you please.
Indeed, Franklin. The foundations of our republic are built upon the Constitution and the laws derived therefrom. When one contests an election's outcome, it must be done within the strictures of these laws. Anything outside this framework not only threatens the very fabric of our governance, but bespeaks a dangerous ambition that could unravel the threads of our union. Hamilton speaks to the point. However, it is imperative to remember that our Constitution provides mechanisms for such disputes to be resolved, ensuring a peaceful transfer of power. It is the loyal opposition's duty, within the framework of our republic, to accept these outcomes, lest we descend into chaos.
But let us not be too hasty in dismissing the right of the people to question their government. It is the bedrock of democracy for grievances to be aired. Yet, it should never be forgotten that such challenges ought to stem from genuine concerns grounded in truth, not unfounded allegations or the siren songs of demagogues.
Contesting election results without just cause or evidence undermines the very integrity of our electoral process. As one who has suffered electoral defeat, I can attest to the difficulty of concession. Yet, the continuity and stability of our nation depend upon such acts of integrity.
The experiment of American democracy is a fragile endeavor, one that demands respect for our institutions and laws. History will not kindly remember those who, in seeking power, incite actions that undermine the stability of this great nation.
Washington rightly admonishes us. The ambition that fuels such challenges, if unchecked by principle, threatens to erode the republic from within. A republic, if we can keep it, requires its citizens and leaders alike to uphold its principles above personal or partisan gain. It then follows that our discussion circles back to the importance of the law and the Constitution. These are not mere guidelines, but the very guardrails that preserve our democracy.
Let us also not forget the role of public education in this discourse. An informed electorate is the bulwark against tyranny. Misinformation and deceit have no place in a free society striving for truth.
Indeed, Jefferson. Yet, as history demonstrates, freedom's light is easily extinguished by the winds of ignorance and apathy. Vigilance remains our eternal charge.
A spirited examination, gentlemen. It is clear that while our principles align, the application thereof in times of strife reveals the complexities of governing. Our republic, it seems, must continually earn its keep in the hearts and minds of its citizens. Gentlemen, we turn our focus to the role of social media in both mobilizing and informing the public. A tool none of us could have envisioned, yet its power is undeniable.
In the spirit of the press being the bulwark of liberty, social media, were it in our day, might have been a double-edged sword. To educate the citizenry, a noble aim, yet how easy it turneth into public squares of cacophony, devoid of truth.
And yet, Jefferson, consider the efficacy of such a tool in the hands of a central government for maintaining public order and promoting beneficial policies. The potential for abuse exists, true, but so does the opportunity for unprecedented civic engagement.
Civic engagement, Hamilton? Nay, I say it breeds rather a horde of factions, each ensconced in their own echo chambers, more likely to foment insurrection than informed discourse.
Both of you touch upon salient points, yet the crux lies within how these platforms amplify factionalism, clearly a concern we addressed in our construction of the Republic. A mechanism to counteract misinformation whilst promoting free expression must be sought.
I must interpose, for the fabric of our nation was woven with the understanding that unity and common purpose shall prevail. Social media, whilst formidable in reach, often sows discord. As the press should not be infringed upon, so must those who use it employ their freedom with a weighty sense of responsibility.
Washington speaks most prudently. The essence of liberty is the freedom to express, yes, but with the evolution of these platforms, the Republic's very sinews are tested by the strains of unfettered speech and the dissemination of falsehoods.
Consider then the utilitarian aspect. Is not a tool merely an extension of the hand that wields it? Thus, social media stands neutral, its virtue or vice determined by usage. To condemn it outright would be as folly as ignoring its potential perils.
Indeed, The pivot upon which this discussion teeters is the balance between freedom and the safeguarding of the Republic. The fabric of our Union holds only as strong as the informed judgment of its citizenry.
Therefore, the cultivation of an electorate capable of discerning truth from falsehood assumes paramount importance. Education, once more, emerges as the bulwark against the misuse of such potent tools.
And let us not forget, the persistence of these echo chambers can only be dismantled through a renewal of civic virtue, where discourse and disagreement are not only tolerated but celebrated as cornerstones of a healthy democracy.
Yet vigilance must be the watchword. The very institutions we hold dear can be undermined with but a few strokes on the keyboard. A republic, if we can keep it, rests upon the shoulders of an ever-vigilant citizenry, prepared to defend it against misinformation and factionalism alike.
Well said, all. Our Constitution was framed with the prediction of future trials. It falls upon each generation to not only withstand these tempests, but to emerge the stronger, bonded by shared truths and a resilient democratic spirit.
A spirited debate, gentlemen, revealing the multifaceted challenges and opportunities presented by social media. It stands as a testament to the enduring task before us, to nurture a republic that values truth, encourages participation, and withstands the torrents of faction and misguidance. Let us now address the importance of civic education in sustaining this republic. Mr. Jefferson, would you enlighten us with your views?
Education is the very foundation upon which the structure of our democracy rests. An informed citizenry is the bulwark of a vibrant republic. I once opined that wherever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government.
While I concur with Mr. Jefferson on the necessity of education, it must be noted that mere education is not sufficient unless it instills a profound understanding and respect for the laws of the land and the principles upon which this nation was founded. Without such grounding, education itself may become a tool of demagoguery. Indeed, Mr. Hamilton, the diffusion of knowledge is essential in ensuring that our republic survives the vicissitudes of time and fortune. Our Constitution is a complex mechanism designed to protect the liberties of the populace. Without a comprehensive understanding of its design and purpose, how can we expect the people to defend it?
It vexes me to observe the neglect of history and government in the education of our youth. How shall they understand the sacrifices made for their freedoms if they are ignorant of their own country's history? A republic, gentlemen, cannot long endure without a populace that understands and cherishes its principles.
There is a weighty responsibility upon us to foster unity and mutual understanding amongst the citizenry. Civic education, in my view, should also aim to cultivate these virtues, strengthening the bonds of national identity and shared purpose.
Alas, Mr. Washington, your vision is laudable, yet we find ourselves in an era where factionalism and parochial interests often overshadow the common good. Civic education must thus teach not only the rights, but also the duties of citizens, including the pursuit of the greater good over narrow self-interest.
And let us not overlook the critical role of civic virtue and morality in our educational curricula. Without instilling in our youth the importance of civic responsibility and ethical conduct, we risk the emergence of a populace capable of understanding their rights, yet indifferent to their duties. It is the very essence of a well-constructed republic that it seeks to educate its populace not only in the mechanics of governance, but also in the virtues required to sustain it. Without this dual focus, our democracy faces peril.
Gentlemen, your insights underscore the complex interplay between knowledge, virtue, and democracy. It is clear that without a concerted effort to advance comprehensive civic education, the very fabric of our republic may fray. Let us hope that future generations heed these admonitions, lest they find themselves ill-prepared to navigate and sustain the grand experiment we have embarked upon. Gentlemen, we now turn to the delicate balance between freedom of speech and the safeguarding of our republic. Mr. Madison, your thoughts commence our dialogue.
It is the opinion of the framer of the First Amendment, which I have the honor to be, that liberty of speech is essential to the health of our nation. Yet, it should not serve as a cloak for malicious activities. Our republic necessitates a robust exchange of ideas, yet we must guard against those utterances which aim to dissolve the very bonds of our union. While I concur with Mr. Madison on the importance of free speech, I am compelled to stress the necessity for a governing body to have the authority to curtail speech that threatens public safety. Recall the Alien and Sedition Acts, though controversial, were designed in part to protect the nation from destructive forces. The challenge lies in applying such measures without descending into tyranny.
Ah, Mr. Hamilton, ever the advocate for increased control. Yet, it is worth remembering that the sedition laws you so fondly recall were used to silence critics of the government, infringing upon the very essence of liberty. If we are to err, let it be on the side of more liberty, not less. The solution to harmful speech is not less speech, but more truthful speech to counteract the falsehoods.
Mr. Jefferson, while your romantic notions of liberty and free expression are commendable, they fail to account for the baser instincts of mankind. Unlimited freedom of speech can lead to chaos and insurrection, as mob rule takes the place of reasoned discourse. There must be limits, else we find our republic a victim of its own ideals, torn asunder by demagogues who wield words as weapons.
I would caution all present to consider the virtue of moderation. In my farewell address, I spoke of the dangers of factions and the potential for despotism if we are not united. This unity does not come from silencing dissent, but rather engaging in thoughtful and respectful discourse. The challenge is distinguishing between speech that enlightens and speech that inflames.
Indeed, General Washington. The difficulty lies not in the defense of speech that we find agreeable, but rather in the defense of speech with which we vehemently disagree. The First Amendment was designed to protect unpopular speech, believing that a marketplace of ideas would ultimately allow truth to prevail. Yet we must not be naive. The very fabric of our society can be unraveled by malicious actors who exploit the liberties we hold dear. A mechanism must exist to protect the Republic from speech that incites violence and insurrection.
And who, pray tell, decides what speech is deemed incendiary? The government? Such power is ripe for abuse. We must remind ourselves that the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It is its natural manure.
Mr. Jefferson, your penchant for dramatics notwithstanding, the practical reality demands we navigate these waters with great care. The preservation of the Republic requires that we protect it from both external foes and internal discord. Yet we must be wary of encroaching upon the liberties that define us.
It appears we find ourselves grappling with an age-old dilemma, the reconciliation of freedom with order. History shall be the judge of how well we maintain this balance. Let us proceed with the understanding that the liberty to speak must be protected, even as we strive to protect the Republic from the harm that speech can sometimes bring. Gentlemen, let us pivot our discussion to the historical and international contexts of insurrections in democracies. Mr. Adams, your thoughts to lead.
Insurrections, as we have seen, arise oft when the populace feels its voice unheard. Yet there is a chasm wide as the ocean between legitimate protest and violent rebellion. Our own revolution and necessary evil was not embarked upon lightly, but as a last resort against tyranny.
Ah, but Mr. Adams, you paint with too broad a brush. Not every insurrection is born of petulance. Some, like our own American Revolution, are the birth pains of democracy itself. Would you then liken our endeavor to the baseless uproar of January 6?
Jefferson, your romanticism blinds you. Not every tempest is the storm of liberty. The January event was a chaos unleashed by falsehoods, unmoored from the righteous cause that guided our revolution. There is danger in equating misguided fury with the noble pursuit of rights. Indeed, Mr. Hamilton and I posit that a well-designed government should have mechanisms to address grievances without recourse to violence. Our Constitution offers such tools: petitions, voting, amendments. When these avenues are available yet ignored, can an insurrection ever be justified?
Gentlemen, recall our situation upon achieving independence. Establishing a government that remained intact amid internal and external pressures was paramount. An insurrection, like that of January 6th, weakens the very fabric of democracy. It does not reinforce it.
Yet, history shows us that revolutions can lead to the birth of great democracies. Are we to deny other nations the tumultuous path we ourselves walked?
Jefferson, your stance dangerously legitimizes anarchy. The strength of a democracy lies in its laws and institutions, in its ability to evolve without descending into chaos. What occurred on January 6th was not evolution but regression.
Both of you, Hamilton and Jefferson, whittle the issue down to a point too fine. The matter at hand is not whether insurrections can be just, but rather what makes them so. It is the cause, the necessity, and the adherence to a higher principle that distinguishes just rebellion from riotous upheaval.
A sagacious point, Mr. Adams. The functionality of a democracy's institutions and the respect for its laws are the bulwarks against the need for insurrection. When these fail or are disregarded, the result can only be what we have witnessed on January 6th, a lamentable exhibition, far removed from the reasoned discourse that ought to guide a republic.
Indeed, it seems we concur that while history may offer examples of justified insurrections, January 6th differs markedly in both cause and conduct. Let us then, as learned men, continue to ponder the means by which democracy can shield itself from such events, whilst fostering the essential dialogue between governance and the governed. Gentlemen, we approach a topic of grave importance: the implications of the events of January the 6th in the year of our Lord 2021 for the future of the American Republic. Mr. Hamilton, pray, lead us off with your thoughts on the resilience of our system of governance.
This insurrection, though alarming, is not a sign of terminal weakness, but a testament to the resilience of our framework, conceived amidst the flames of revolution. Our Constitution has weathered storms, but it holds, provided we learn and adapt. Peril is ever the forge of strength, yet this event should not be a mere footnote. It demands introspection and fortitude to prevent its reoccurrence.
Insightful as ever, Hamilton, but you gloss over the essential ingredient: civic engagement and education. The body of the Republic, akin to a living organism, grows frail without sustenance. This event is a clarion call, nay, an urgent summons to recommit to the principles of our founding. A populace aloof from the Republic's workings, seduced by demagogues or ensnared in falsehood, can but lead to ruin.
Both prescient points. However, propelling forward requires a keen understanding of the architecture of our government. Amendments and reforms may be necessary, emphasizing the mechanisms that ensure a balance and prevent the accumulation of power, which might lead to tyranny. We designed a system capable of evolution. Let January 6th bespeak the need for such evolution.
Reform, yes, but let us not be too hasty to upend the very foundations in response to this conflagration. The stability and continuum of our government rest upon the consent of the governed, yes, but also on a steady adherence to law and precedent. One day's madness need not undo a system that has stood the test of over 2 centuries.
And yet, stability and the rule of law demand our utmost respect for the institutions that bind this nation. Factionalism, as demonstrated, threatens to unravel the very fabric of our union. Our collective commitment to the principles of democracy, to unity, to the common weal, must override transient passions and divisive rhetoric.
Well put, General. But let us not forget, the ignition of this event was fueled by unchecked ambition and the propagation of falsehood. A robust rebuttal to lies, a commitment to truth, and transparency in governance are paramount.
Indeed. Yet let the event also remind us of our resilience, not just our vulnerabilities. As we have weathered storms before, so shall we navigate this gale. But it necessitates a vigilance and a dedication to principles that seem of late to have waned.
We stand at a juncture, gentlemen. The path we choose following this crisis will indelibly mark the character of our republic. Let it be a path of wisdom, of reflection, and of an unwavering commitment to the ideals upon which our great experiment was founded.
A lively discussion, as I anticipated. The future of our republic, it seems, lies not in a rejection of our foundational principles, but in their reaffirmation and in adapting to meet the exigencies of the present. In unity, truth, and vigilance, there lies our path forward. Gentlemen, your insights shall prove invaluable as we navigate these tumultuous waters. Let us proceed to our final thoughts on this grave matter. I urge each of you to lend your voice.
It stands undebatable that such events as those witnessed on January the 6th tarnish the very essence of our republic. We fought for a system of governance where laws, not men, rule. This foundation must be preserved against all forms of insurrection. Factionalism, I've forewarned, is the greatest threat to our national unity and must be met with a firm hand, whilst always upholding the liberties we so cherish.
Whilst I concur with General Washington on the peril of factions, let us not forget that the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Yet, the blood spilt on January the 6th was not in the name of genuine liberty. It was an affront to it. The sanctity of our democratic processes must be upheld, and the citizens' responsibility towards informed and reasoned dissent must be emphasized over wanton sedition.
The chaos unraveled reveals a stark truth. Our institutions, formidable though they may be, require constant vigilance and fortification. The resilience of the American system relies not solely on the mechanisms of governance, but on the character and conduct of those who wield its powers. The rule of law must prevail, and those who seek to undermine it, whether through force or deceit, must be met with the full force of said laws. Indeed, Mr. Hamilton, the recent tumult underscores a critical examination of our democratic systems and a call for potential reforms. Our Federalist principles were designed to thwart the rise of tyranny, either of a singular monarch or of an unruly mob. Thus, we must refine these principles in the face of evolving threats, ensuring the Republic stands resilient against the tests of time and humanity's darker inclinations.
There's a somber truth to behold in this discussion. The endurance of our democracy is not preordained. It requires the active participation, the moral fortitude, and the enlightened understanding of each citizen. January the 6th was a harrowing reminder of what transpires when these virtues are abandoned. Yet let it also serve as a clarion call to our citizenry to recommit themselves to the principles of justice, liberty, and democracy.
Mr. Adams speaks with great wisdom. Our republic's future lies in the balance of these very principles.
Gentlemen, your insights, as always, prove most enlightening. If history serves as our guide, it is clear that the Republic's health necessitates constant vigilance, an informed populace, and leaders whose allegiance is to the Constitution over faction or personal ambition. January the 6th must hence be a lesson to us all, a stark reminder of our duties as citizens and guardians of democracy. As we part, let us remember our shared commitment to a more perfect union, however arduous that endeavor may be.